What happens when you combine the meticulous mind of a top medical professional with a passion for velvet Anthuriums? You get this. Today, we're touring the mind-blowing plant room of Grant, a diagnostic radiologist by day and Anthurium breeder by night. He trades in the sterile walls of the clinic for a custom-built Anthurium sanctuary. I thought the variety of his Anthurium species were going to impress me, and they did. But look at this setup. The cool ambient air with the perfect humidity, the insane watering system, and the sheer scale of his collection. It's all an immediate visual shock. This isn't just a plant tour. This is a look at an epic setup and Grant's full process on growing and breeding Anthurium. From tiny seedlings and seeds all the way up to massive mother plants, this garage setup is insane. It's packed with the best-in-class equipment for growing and hybridizing these stunning plants, and every detail is clinically perfect. He is an upcoming breeder to watch, and this is a lab where the magic happens. Let's dive in and have him show us around, shall we?
Right after I moved in my plants, we got 2 feet of salt water in the garage. So I lost a bunch of plants. My kunas and Dressleri are just really recovering now. So it kind of set me back with the breeding for those. But I've been working on it. It's a constant struggle because I keep trying to expand, but at the same time trying to organize too and update things. So it's I think I'm finally gotten to a point where I'm a little bit ahead of myself and how much space I've created, so I can start to refine things. But it's just been, up till now, it's just been a real struggle to find space. I finally was able to just wrestle away the whole garage because
that's great.
My wife wanted to park her car in here, and I was like, I think I need to take the rest of the garage. So now that I have this half, I can just kind of keep adding shelving and stuff.
How many tents do you have in here?
So I have two main tents. So I have a 10 by 10. It's a really tall one here. It's for mother plants behind this shelf. So that one's 9 or 10 feet tall. So I can get more verticality. I have more shelves. This one is another 10 by 10 here, and that's for my established seedlings that are out of the dome trays. And then I have two 2x4s that are kind of breakouts for in-betweener type plants that are holdbacks that are not quite big enough to go in the mother plant tent, but they're ones I wanted to separate from the main gen pop over here. And then we've got these breakout shelves that I have all of my everything from the seeds germination trays here up to kind of seedlings that really need to get out of these domes because they're starting to bust out of the top. So that's kind of the conveyor belt that I have. I have seeds to these little meal prep containers with germination. Once those sprout, I pick the ones that look good. If I sold them, I pick out the nice sprouts to sell, and then I take the rest and pot them up. And then once they have a good little root and a nice little leaf, they go into these multi-cell trays. So you can see some of those down there are sprouts that have just got potted up. And then 3, 4, 5 leaves, depending on the cross, because certain ones will get bigger faster. Then they'll go into the main seedling tent over here in individual 2-inch pots. And then some of them make it to 4-inch pots, some of them don't. And then they from there they go to pawn if I keep them. Otherwise they'll grow indefinitely in a 4-inch pot. And they can get quite large. I'll show you some plants. In a 4-inch pot, you can grow a flowering sized large plant, because in the semi-hydroponic system, basically, I'll show you, they're growing in these giant communal trays.
What is going on here, really?
Oh, this is my fertilizer. This is a 30-gallon bin barrel, and there's a mixer in here called an aero mixer, and basically it just pulls in air and so it oxygenates and mixes at the same time. So this keeps my fertilizer solution mixed and aerated.
Wow.
Eventually, the goal is to get like a full ebb and flow system where this will automatically pump into these trays in here. But it's just something I've had to kind of like slowly add the infrastructure to do, and I haven't had a chance to get it all set up. But that's the ultimate goal. Because you can see these big trays are 2 by 4 feet. Each one of them holds 4 10-20 trays. And you can see these fittings down here. These would be the hose hookups for the ebb and flow system. Currently, I just use them to drain the trays when I need to like switch it out.
Where did you get 2 by 4?
These are, so a company called Botanicare makes these.
Okay.
And then Greenhouse Farm or Bootstrap Farmer started making their own version of these, basically like a carbon copy of the Botanicare trays. And basically they're 2 by 4 foot. They have a tray in the back that dips below, so it like collects. It's hard to like see it, but there's like a trough in the back. It's a little deeper back there, so that's how you drain. And they're designed to go on 18-inch deep racks, so that the trough sits off the back of the rack, and then this part sits on top of the rack, and so they're kind of perfect for these 18-inch racks here. So that's how I've set this up, just to kind of like streamline my whole setup, so I don't have to like water like 1,000 things, so yeah, they're great. They're great if you have like the space in a rack to do this. I think it's a great way to grow seedlings. And my big hesitation in the beginning was like, everyone's like paranoid about spreading like infection and stuff like that, and it just hasn't really happened. I don't think I've lost a single seedling to fungal infection or anything like that in this system. As long as you're changing out the water with some regularity every month or two, and I have air stones in here to kind of keep them aerated, and that the air stones also create a little bit of circulation as well. So keeping the water moving and aerated is kind of like a double bonus there. So that prevents algae buildup as well. That's the main reason that I added those. But yeah, this has been a slow process, kind of tweaking and constantly adjusting shelf heights, and these shelves are a nightmare to adjust. So yeah. These are the babies. Yeah, they all looked great before they were soaked in salt water. I'll show you the mother plants in a little bit. The Kuna PM3 is still in a prop bin. I'm actually finally going to put it into the main tent now. PM5 is coming back really nicely right now. It has a really beautiful emergent right now that you can look at. Yeah, go in. Just, be careful. There's still a little bit of clutter on the ground. I'm always moving stuff around and adjusting.
So are these in the middle your babies, and then the ones on the opposite sides? Are they?
So everything in here is mine. These in the middle is props in these prop bins. So these are props of my own clones that I've made. They're props of whatever other clones that I have. DF, some of the PM Kunas, Stripey, all that stuff. The clones that I have. Yeah, and then everything out here is my seedlings in these shelves, and everything in those shelves over there. It's all my stuff that I've made. So this is my main like Carla shelf here. These are round X GPH back cross to GPH. Those are F2s there. This is my last GPH shelf that I'm hanging on to here. Pretty much out of those.
That's beautiful.
This is another round X GPH F2. You can just see how variable the different batches are from each other, which I love. Some of these are like super, veiny and weird. And then there's other ones that are like, super minimal and long. So I love that because that gives me a lot of variety to play with and kind of create new side projects and things like that.
What do you got over here?
These are
more of those.
These are Anthurium RF1 Dark Star. These are RVDP X BVPRA1. These are Crystallinum Labyrinth. These are pretty cool too. These are more round GPH F2s. This is from one of my Aberrant mother plants. So these are looking pretty long already.
Yeah.
A lot of different stripey crosses.
Ooh, I found the variegated.
Those are the variegated Pap X crossed with stripey right there. So those are looking nice so far. Here's a stripey Carla that's looking pretty nice. This will be one of my keepers probably.
That's insane looking. That's beautiful.
Here's actual stripey. There's a big prop of it right there. Look at that. I have the mother plant in the tent too, but oh, that little one there. Yeah, it's very
I didn't
spectacular
see that.
even from a small size.
What is that?
This is Heinz. This one's actually going to my friend Juan, who originally gave me my Heinz. So that's why you give backups to your friends.
Yeah.
So I use almost exclusively the Verena T5s, and I use the pinkish white spectrum. In pictures, they look really pink, but when you're in person, they're fairly neutral to look at. They're not like obnoxious.
Yeah.
The full pink ones are so pink that it's not pleasant to work with them, so I don't use those. Although I think a lot of people think I do from the pictures because the iPhone just can't handle them. At least I don't know how to use it properly. But yeah, I use the pinkish white Verena T5s because they're just kind of like the perfect intensity for like the shelf spacing that I have. It seems to help with like compact dark growth. I don't really get a lot of etiolation, even though I'm growing in pretty low light. Most of these are in like 200 to 250 FC, which is pretty low. And they generate almost no heat. The T8s from Verena, I used to use a lot more early on, but they generate a lot of heat.
Yeah, they do.
So especially if you're growing, in a place that doesn't have like climate control or like a small room or something like that, like it can add like several degrees to your tent temperatures during the day if you don't like program in like off times and stuff like that. These are just you can just touch these. They don't get hot at all.
Oh, wow.
They're pretty low power. Here's one of my bigger like round RF1 dark stars here, nice and round.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. That cross had a lot of interesting variability. Like some of them were super narrow and long, some of them are really round, which again I love because I want to pick out all the like extremes and like kind of emphasize that. And then these are all Dressleri, F1A, F1B.
It's really beautiful.
Nice purpley emergence. So it's really hard to see, but this like dark area and the green area is actually this odd variegation pattern. Ooh. It looks almost like edema damage, but when it emerges, it's much more pronounced. But some of the number 2 wild clone crosses did that. It's kind of unusual. But then I propped this one. This is actually the prop that stayed variegated in the mother plant, which is right here. Didn't, but it's beautiful. So, that's the mother plant, which is no longer showing variegation, but it's got a very like gorgeous, emergent coloration on it.
I'm so excited for mine to get big.
That's beautiful.
These are my last remaining like round GPH XGPH bat cross here in this tray, and then those are all F2s.
Is this an F2 then?
That in the back there, those two are GPH Amandas.
Oh,
that's why they have that like
that one
they have that more like minimal veination there. Those are my last couple of those. That was a small batch as well, unfortunately. This is a Cape Oasis clone from High that I traded him for last year, and then it was like immediately destroyed in the hurricane, but thankfully came back and is only just growing now. I traded him a prop of my Labyrinth. These are Labyrinth props.
Whoa!
It's another one that's very interesting. It shows like its full mature vein pattern even from little props. Sometimes it takes a little while to show, but
man.
And then here's a good demonstration of how you don't really need roots if you've got a big stem piece, because this doesn't have any roots.
Beautiful.
But yeah, this is one of my favorite plants for sure.
That's insane.
It looks like the Cape and the Heinz, but like on the path.
Yeah, I'm breeding them. I'm breeding those all together too, because I just love how the veins kind of like just fade off the edge. They just go. They don't respect the edges of the leaves. They just kind of do their thing. Yeah, so that's really most of the prop bin. I don't think there's anything else super interesting in here. Here's a prop of one of my Aberrant Carlas. You can see. This is number one. This is one that kind of stays very narrow and minimal. And the mother plant's in the main tent, so I'll show that to you.
Your Carlas are nice.
Yeah, I knew you would love that. It's like,
Well, they're narrow and skinny and like not the typical Carla shape. I love that.
Yeah, GPH seems to impart that a lot.
Yeah.
With the caveat that, you know, I always give this little spiel when people ask me for like narrow Carlas. Like, yes, GPH is on the more narrow side, and it does create a lot of offspring that are more narrow than like the average Carla. But Carlas, just like a lot of the Panamanian velvets, Anthuriums, dress, even kuna, do have a phase of maturation where they tend to get elongated, kind of like larger seedling size into early caterpillar, and they will all invariably widen more as they mature, even a few leaves past caterpillar. But they will say, if they looked very narrow as seedlings, they will be, you know, more narrow. But they won't be like, they're not going to stay daggers unless they're like some sort of weird mutation or aberration. Like this was like you know, 1 out of hundreds kind of thing. You know, like although some of the other ones are still fairly narrow. I just see a lot of people selling, you know, like Dagger, BVP, Dagger, Carla, and I kind of wince every time I see that, because, you know, I know it's not probably gonna last, at least not to the extent that they're hoping for, because these aren't really narrow plants. That's just not their.
They're not.
Yeah, that's not their DNA. But yeah, and then so.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, these have helped me a lot. Having a sink has been one of the biggest game changers for me. Like, because you take trays outside every time and hose them down when it's, you know, Florida cold. You know, when it's 65. I got to put on a jacket to go outside. But yeah, the sink's been nice. And these benches are where I kind of do. This is my repotting station here. I tend to do like make my labels and process seeds on this one, because I have like this waterproof thing on top for getting all the seeds mush. You know.
How are you processing seeds? I see you have several over here. How long do they stay in water?
So as little time as possible. But you know, sometimes when I have a few things dropping at once and, you know, packages to ship and stuff, they sit longer than I want to. So I do make sure to change the water every day, but really the answer is you want to keep them in water as little as possible, because the longer they're in water, the more bacteria and fungus is going to kind of build up in there, and you're going to get some rotten seeds. And you know, it'll happen fast. Like, they'll look great, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see some seeds floating to the top, and then by the time you process them, a bunch of them are mush. And so basically I usually, in an ideal world, I'm harvesting them off the inflow, let them soak maybe overnight in water to make them a little bit easier to work with, and then pop them all, do a few like rinsing steps to get them to be like fairly clean, and then I'll probably let them soak again overnight, and then kind of remove the rest of the skins and pulp with, you know, paper towels, kind of to abrade them, get them nice and dry, and then I'll put them into these meal prep containers. So I just fill them with fern in the bottom, moisten it up with some fertilizer. I do fertilize my seeds and everything, and then close them up, label, and put them over in one of those big trays like you see behind you. Those are all crosses that I haven't potted up yet.
Do you do full strength fertilizing for seedlings, or?
I do the full strength of my fertilizer, yes, which is about half strength of the manufacturer recommendation for my fertilizer that I use. So yeah, I use the same fertilizer solution for all of my plants. I used to add like a bloom booster to my base fertilizer to give to my flowering plants, and I just stopped doing it for simplicity's sake, and I haven't really noticed any difference because most of my plants were flowering every leaf anyway. So I thought if anything I might be, you know, adding more potential for like salt burns and things like that by just adding extra fertilizer, and I don't want to have 2 drums to mix, so I stopped doing it. I haven't noticed any decline at all. Plus Tazula stopped carrying the product that I was using, so they made it easy for me.
Do these not need light?
Oh, those do get light. I just rebuilt this shelf yesterday to be taller.
Gotcha.
So I'll add another shelf here with underlights, just like the other one has over there.
Okay.
If you don't give them light and there's light in the area, it's a problem because they'll start stretching like little mini like giraffes, and then they're really hard to pot up. It makes it kind of a mess to pot up. But yeah, so these are I usually have like 5 to 7 crosses in varying stages of being processed at any given time over here, and then you know that's a nightmare over there to try to pot all those up. And then this is the mother plant tent.
I like that you use carpet in all of these.
Yeah, I got that idea from Brendan. I don't want to mess up his name. Bouger, I think is how you pronounce it. Yeah, Buzz Plants. He did that in his tent when he set it up, and I liked it a lot. And it's nice for cleaning too, because it's more of like vacuuming a carpet instead of like that weird tarp material. Mm-hmm. There's a crab.
Why is there a crab in here?
I get a lot of crabs in here. That one's dead. He's dried out. So we have mangroves behind our house, and so like little mangrove and fiddler crabs will just crawl in here. They're kind of like our cockroaches, and unfortunately they dry out and die usually. So
that's insane.
Yeah, so we almost always have a few of them in here. My son loves it. He likes hunting for crabs inside our garage. But
I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Kuna PM5 finally like really coming back. It's put out a couple like so-so leaves since the storm. I mean, it's been these plants really were wrecked. I'm lucky that I didn't like lose them entirely, but that's just a beautiful leaf. And then there's PM7, that non-emergent with the yellow halo around it there. I just finally potted that up into a bigger pot and got it in here. Yeah, I'm still this is still a work in progress too. I gotta kind of rearrange everything. I had to raise all my shelves. You see that they're all about like 1.5 feet off the ground for nematode certification to ship to California. Even though I'm indoors, they require an elevation of 12 inches for this tent and 18 inches for the seedling tents, because their rules are for outdoor greenhouses where water can splash up, but they just kind of like indiscriminately apply them to everyone for no reason. So I lost like 1 foot basically, so I had to readjust everything.
Are you growing everything in pond?
Yeah. So I've been now making my own pond since the Lechuza kind of shortages that we had. I've kind of modeled it after the black pond that they make. So it's mostly black lava rock and then some other smaller percentage additives, and everything's done really well in it so far. So, and I've been able to, I can control the particle size, because Lechuza over the past few years has had a pretty big slip in QC, and their particle size has gotten very small. Like people will like jokingly call it kitty litter, because it's just it's too small. It stays too wet, and it gets too compacted in like larger pot sizes. This is round. The clone, it's a little bit in need of a repot. It's starting to form a trunk, so I need to repot it. But so those two are kind of banished to this overflow shelf at the moment. This is kind of the main Carla shelf here.
You're living my dream, huh, Monet?
Well, look at that fat inflow back there.
Oh yeah, that's this guy here. That's round GPH number 3, ex King of Clarinervium. And then this is Amanda here.
Whoa.
And here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's kind of tucked behind here. This shelf's getting crowded, but this is round GPH number 5, which has become one of my favorites for sure. This one was fairly narrow, to give you an example, as a seedling, and this is kind of how it matured too. So it's elongated for a Carla, because the default Carla shape is very round, but it's not a dagger. This is round XGPH Aberrant number 1. So this is a fully mature plant. It's a little bit on the the dwarf side, but this is why I call it Aberrant, because it's kind of maintained that juvenile morphology into maturity. This is Aberrant number 2. This was a dagger, like a straight up dagger as a small seedling. It's widened up, but it's kind of maintained its unusual vein characteristics that made me pick it out. So it doesn't have any secondary veins at all. It just has these primary lateral veins at the bottom, but it has no contrast secondary veining. It's just starting to like maybe tease a couple here, but then this is a GPH self, a cool one from the original batch. It's looking a little stressed out, but this is actually GPH clone. I had to regrow this from a prop because it got a little bit stressed out when I was breeding it before. So this is kind of a juvenile leaf, but it'll get bigger than this and a little bit more spectacular. But you can see kind of how dark the leaf color is. This is OG2. This is Scott's plant. This is the OG2 clone. It's really nice. It looks like it could be a GPH, relative. Has kind of similar color and the vein characteristics are kind of similar. This is a cool one. This is round GPH Aberrant number 3. This one has like really thick leaves and wavy edges and this kind of weird, like very vertical orientation to the veins. I don't know how to describe it, but like it's just very unusual. And then it has this funky growth habit where it just stacks leaves like a shield wall, like. So it's like I have to like coax the leaves like out from under the canopy to get them out because it's so compact of a grower. It's kind of funny. Yeah. So that's the Carla shelf. Here's round XGPH number 1. This one was this was one of the darkest ones I ever had. It's got kind of more of the bleeding veins. So when I was picking my holdbacks, I wanted like a big variety. So I wanted to capture a lot of different traits, thick veins, thin veins, more veins, less veins, different shapes. And that's allowed me to, I've made like several F2 batches. It's allowed me to create a lot of variety from just 2 original parent plants, rather than trying to make copies of the parent plants.
Yeah.
Like when I think that's like a lot of people like try to remake the parent plants, and that's how I kind of started out too. And then I realized at some point, it's like I already have the parent plant. So like, why would I want to recreate that? So I tend to sell the plants that look a lot like the parents because most people who are buying them, want something that looks like the parent. So like with the GPH selves, I like preferentially sold ones that I thought looked like GPH because I already have GPH. I wanted to make kind of weird looking things that would look different than the parents. And so that's kind of what I've gravitated towards holding back myself. This is like an RA lineage Carla that's pretty cool. I got this from Justin Schumann. He didn't know like the exact cross of it because he got it a long time ago, but I think it probably a seed grown plant just with an unlabeled cross. That one has in the beginning this guy number 1 was everybody's favorite. This is one everybody asks me about all the time, but I think number 2 is really gaining on it. I'm partial to number 2, although I love both of them. And then these are like I have a bunch of other like assorted Carla holdbacks over here. So GPH self. That's a GPH Carla round GPH back cross. This is another back cross. This one's one of my favorites here.
That's beautiful.
It's just very, very dark, and you can see like it holds that dark color for what, I don't know, 6 leaves here, which is the other thing that I try to select for. I'm trying to not pretty much any Carla, if you grow it in cool temperatures and you take care of it, will put out like 1 black leaf. But it can be tricky to find ones that hold that color for several consecutive leaves. Obviously conditions help with that, but some of it is genetics. So this is RL clone here. These are some selfs that I'm harvesting right now. He put his inflow all the way over here to trick you, but this is from that one. And then this is actually a Fort Sherman Ralph Lynam X Fort Sherman that I made myself and held back, and it's pretty cool. I think it holds its own next to RL clone. These are the only 2 paps that I have kept for breeding purposes right now. So I've kind of shifted towards mostly BVP breeding because the paps just get too leggy. People don't understand how big they get when they buy them, and then all of a sudden they're 3 feet wide and 3 feet tall. And I thought paps were small.
So many Carlos right now.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm trying to select specifically for particularly compact Carlas. So, but yeah, Carla and BVP are kind of my go-tos for pure species right now.
Show us some of your BVEPs.
Okay. Yeah, so this, I'll just start on the left. This is kind of like a weird one from my Round X BBL cross that I made with Juan. That stays really tiny. It has like this heart shape. I just call it like dark heart. It's super creative, I know. But this is how big it gets. It's a little beat up right now, but it's kind of a cool plant. It has like very purpley emergence. This one I call Archelon, named after like a giant turtle, because you can see how the leaves are cupped like that.
That's so weird.
That happens on every leaf. So they all are like concave like that, and it's very dark. This was a Round X Felix F2. It's a pretty cool plant. That's going to be a big focus of my like round BVP breeding line versus the RA1 stuff is for more narrow. This is a Round X Felix F2 that I held back for its very orange veins. So this is 1 growth head. So this isn't 2 emergence. This is the previous leaf. There's 3 leaves back. And then this is the newest leaf here, still emerging. You see it's very like peachy orange, which is kind of like a less common trait that I've seen in BVP so far. So I'm going to try to emphasize that. And these are some RF1 Dark Star holdbacks that I have, which I just thought were particularly nice. This one might be my favorite here. They have that nice star-shaped sinus like Dark Star. There's Dark Star right there. It's a little chlorotic, but you can still see that. I just love that sinus area. It's just so perfect to me for BVP. And then like the high basal vein count. So there's just a lot of basal veins. That one has like six or 7, which kind of gives it that spidery look.
Mm-hmm.
When the BVPs don't have like a high basal vein count, like they just kind of lose a little bit of that look to me. And then this is the sibling to Dark Star. This is number 2, Round X RA1 number 2. It's a little bit more elongated. It looks a lot like the RA1 parent plant. Here's that one's previous leaf. So this is a narrow BVP at maturity. Like this is narrow. They don't get a lot narrower than that. Like, so people expecting like a dagger BVP are gonna. But this is the dagger BVP. This plant looked like a straight, like it was proportioned like a literal dagger when I was a seedling. It was very, very long. That's why I held it back.
Oh,
that's one.
okay. Oh, I gotta go very fast.
Yeah, so I had to tune these to. It's more of a spritz.
Okay.
If you let them run longer than that, this tray fills up really fast. For 1, and for 2, the amount of water will outpace the amount of water that the plants drink, and you'll
Gotcha.
never refill the reservoirs, and eventually it'll, overflow
Gotcha.
and dilute everything. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how long to run them. I run them for a few seconds every 30 minutes during the day, and then less at night.
Interesting.
In the seedling tent, it's not as big of a deal because I have those big catch trays, and I can drain a little bit if I need to with just opening the valve. But these ones I can't do that, so I have to manually pump out the water. But they seem to appreciate it.
I know. I want to ask about this, but I don't want to interrupt. We're going through this. What do you have?
No,
on
ask
here?
away. Yeah. So on the left is, we talked about that's PM5 kuna,
Mm-hmm.
showing off its very nice emergent. I love that one too because it's kind of like diamond shaped. Then bottom middle here, this is actually a Nudibranche. It's one of those newer cloud forest plants. It looks kind of like a mix between splendidum and debule, and it kind of behaves like that as well, unfortunately. But I'm trialing it out in the open tent here. It wasn't a prop box before, so we'll see. It hasn't wilted yet. So, and then there's one of my keeper PM3, PM5s on the left there, right next to the Nudibranche, and then my kind of sad looking debule there to the right here. It's got really nice texture. It looks a little sad right now. That's another one I'm trialing in the tent. To me, honestly, that's the single hardest species to get to grow perfectly. I can throw a splendidum in an enclosed tank in a standing bucket of water, and it'll grow perfect leaves happily for forever. It takes a little bit of initial setup, but you can get them to grow perfect. I had before the storm, I had 5 perfect leaves. It was flowering. Debule, I don't know what they want. I really don't know what they want. Some people say it's cool temperature. Some people say it's staying moist. Some people say it's mist. But to me, they just don't really want to be happy.
I'm grateful.
Yeah. So, and then over here is most of my Dressleri clones and my main holdbacks. This is F2 dark clone. It's a little bit bleached out right now from making a huge seed batch. It had a foot-long inflow on it that I just cut off. This is one of the F1 clones. This is another F1 clone. Again, these ones just bred. They're kind of sensitive to being bred. They'll get a little bit lighter color than when they're perfectly happy and chilling. This is another F1 clone. This is an F2 kind of dwarf clone that originally was from Chris Hirata, Hawaiian plant hunter. He doesn't really post much anymore, but he had a really nice collection, and this was his one that he got from Jay. And then the rest of these are holdbacks from my F2 self and some other crosses that also got kind of decimated in the storm. So unfortunately, those are just coming back now, and they're still struggling a little bit. Kind of. So I got my first Anthurium in 2021.
No way.
It was kind of like a COVID hobby. So, I always liked plants, but I was in college and I lived in an apartment, so I couldn't really make a tent. And we moved down here, and I was like, hey, I can just grow whatever I want in my house. So started out small and then kind of took off from there.
This is incredible for 4 years.
Did you always have Anthuriums? Is that what you started
I didn't
with,
even know
or-
about Anthuriums until then. I always liked plants. I like tropical plants, but I never had really ventured into the world any deeper than nice landscape plants. I like cycads and philodendrons and things like that, but bromeliads.
Sort of Anthuriums now.
Yeah, well, yeah, cycads are tough because you don't get any second chances. You can't cut it back and regrow it. This is Spider, Bessie AF Spider. This is also coming back from a long rest from being bred very hard. This plant takes about 9 months to seed, which is on the higher end for Bessiaf, and it really takes a lot out of it. So I'm happy to see like finally a nice leaf.
What's behind her?
That's like very very unhappy blood moon with a couple of growth heads on it that I'm hiding behind spider-best leaf.
Sorry.
No, you're
don't
fine.
look at that.
There's night dragon there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice plant. There's a RVDP. It's a little bit a smaller plant, also beautiful. Night dragon gets quite large. That's also kind of like a post prop breeding leaf, so it's not as big as they actually get. But
what's the difference between those two?
So RVDP and night dragon are from the same batch from Cyan Flora, the breeders. The night dragon is their one select plant that they held back for themselves, and then they kind of like propped it and sold kind of limited ones that they distributed to a few growers. Whereas RVDP is the one that they gave to more like large scale sellers that were all imported. So they're like, there's a few plants from that batch. It was Night Dragon, which was their kind of more exclusive clone that they held back, RVDP, and then there was a couple of variegated ones that they also held back. Like one was called like Bullion. It was like a more yellowish variegation, color of gold variegation. They had one called like Peach Lava, and the whole cross was supposedly like, I want to say the Thai variegated Papex crossed with Ace of Spades Tazula. And you can kind of, when you know that, you can see the ace come through. And I've seen it come through in some of the seedlings as well. Some of them have a little bit of ace characteristics to them.
I didn't know there was different ones out of that batch. That's interesting.
Another spam call. And then these are Delta Force X opens that are really cool, I think. I think they're probably selfs. But look at this one. Like, it's got like a kind of like, call it like an umbrella sinus. Some like people call it negative sinus. So I actually bought my Delta Force from Barry, and it had a pollinated inflow on it, and he had gotten it from Ree, and they thought it was a self, but because I couldn't confirm that, I just sold them as open. But now that I've grown out a number of them, I do think they probably are selves, at least a good number of them. But this kind of had a lot of interesting ones. I do like breeding these clary type hybrids in addition to the, more usual cardio section stuff.
You must be very patient though.
Yeah, well, it's nice when you have 100 other plants. You can kind of have one of those in the background making seeds for 9 months. You don't really think about it. If it's like your only plant, it's very frustrating. It's watching paint dry.
My perspective is very kind of like, oh, this is too severe.
Well, when you think that they're ready, it's like 5 more months, because like the berries are so big too, so they have to get this giant, and they take forever to mature. So yeah, it's kind of, this has kind of been my like, this is a fresh leaf here. Yeah, so this shelf I need to kind of reorganize. It's been kind of my like overflow shelf as I like decide exactly what height I want my shelves to be at. This is probably going to be like mostly red crystals and stuff up here because this is a good height for them, but then bigger stuff like Stripey and the NSE bench hybrid that's up there in the right corner, and then this is Af crystallinum up there. These big giant leaves. This is Af crystallinum. With that, this is the Katie clone NSE bench hybrid. It has this propensity lately to do this kind of stress thing here, but it looks really cool. Where you get kind of this puckering around the sinus. It's like it's related to stress. It's kind of something that I'm probably gonna write like an article about pretty soon, like all these different stress related morphology changes that leaves show, and then sometimes people kind of get fooled by them.
I think that's some cool.
Like I wouldn't like name this based off that leaf, and then always take a picture of that leaf and sell it based on that leaf, because I don't think that's really ethical. But we won't go into that too much.
Please do.
Read the article.
But they're still cool. It's cool. And this plant has done this a number of times when it's stressed, so it's not like it's not possible for it to do it again, but it's not really like, it's not necessarily a trait of the plant. But yeah, so that's those. There's Stripey in the middle there. Stripey I've bred pretty hard, as anyone who's been on my website has seen. So it's been a very, very vigorous plant. It's just starting to get a little bit of like edge yellowing and stuff, just because it's probably pollinated like 6 straight inflows at this point. But it's a beautiful plant. That vein pattern is just so interesting.
There's another weird vein one I saw.
Yes, so that is a really cool King of Spades that I got from Indonesia, from a grower called Diamond Plants. And I love the vein pattern, super minimal. It does remind me a lot of some of the stripey type plants, the sinus area, the texture looks very similar. It just looked very unusual compared to other King of Spades, and has these very, very like vibrant, like blood red emergence that are really cool. So hoping to have some stuff coming out with that pretty soon. King of Spades can be a little bit finicky to breed with other like section cardio stuff, but I do have a couple of crosses that had decent yields from them, so should have some stuff in the winter, hopefully.
Yeah, I know.
This is Labyrinth here. Starting to show kind of gets a nice little rainbow coloration on it.
Yeah.
When it comes out. That's the one that I showed you the props of in the bin over there.
I love the lime green in it.
Yeah, around the veins, it's really cool. It's just very like neon highlighter. And then these are some block plants next to it over there that I liked the veins on. Kind of like red crystals type stuff. One of them's a tortoise shell cross. One of them's like Home Sweet Home velvet cake or something like that. But there was a certain look I was looking for, obviously, because they look very similar. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what is this back here with the green looking?
This is a wonky Heinz leaf. This plant did not like being cut. I'll say that. I may have cut it right after it made seed too, which is something I would caution people to do, because the more like compounded stresses that a plant has just experienced before you cut it, the worse the cuttings are going to do. That's why like sometimes you'll see people like selling like a prop of a plant, but what really happened was the plant crashed and they just cut it, and whatever was going on with the plant is still in the cutting. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful, and sometimes you just got to let the plant breathe a little bit before you cut it. But anyway, this plant did not like that, but this is the first leaf it put out afterwards, so it's down to like 2 leaves. But normally they're a little nicer and bigger, and there's not this weird like melting off of the leaf over there. But this kind of still shows that cool vein pattern where it just kind of like goes right to the margins, which is what I love. And that's what the Labyrinth does that as well. Like it just kind of trails straight off the edges. So I have these seedlings with these crossed together that I'm excited for. They're already showing a lot of like silvery veination. So, and then here's another one kind of in the same family. Like in terms of appearance, this is a Cape Oasis clone. Not the same one that the props are from. This is not the one from High. This is a different one from Australia, but another nice one that hopefully I'll be able to kind of integrate into the whole, veiny breeding lines pretty soon.
It's crazy looking.
Yeah, this one's got extra like white, crispy veins. I like that a lot. This is a cool one. This is the Pap Fort Sherman Exdebial, the one that I call Smog. It's just very unusual. Like if you can feel it, like it's got very like thick, like leathery leaves.
Feel that.
So this was another like aberrant plant that I picked out when I first was growing it. this is a prop of it. So you can see this is kind of more what it looked like when it was a seedling. It was very daggery. Like this was a runt.
Wow.
But it had this very weird, like dark, narrow, thick texture to it. So then I was just going to grow this out for a while. It took a couple years to get like this, but it was worth it. This is kind of the plant that changed my approach to runts a little bit. Like whereas previously, if anything was small, I would toss it.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like if they have certain interesting traits, I'll kind of like just grow them to the side and see what happens with them. And once in a while, you luck out.
You said Pap the Bill?
It's a Pap Debile. It's a Fort Sherman self that I crossed with Eli Pogue's Debile, which I think he has one of the nicer ones.
Loving that.
But this is the only one that turned out like this from that batch. And then that emergent there is a Kuna dress. And then there's just like a select F2 black Dressleri from one of my crosses next to it. This is another chocolate that I got. It's adjusting to pond life. It was growing in pure moss, which took me an hour to get off of the roots. And so I lost a lot of roots doing it, and so it's a little bit angry at me, but it was a nightmare. It was very happy in moss.
Sorry.
I mean, it's great if it fits with your workflow, but for me, or I'm like repotting so many things, like repotting anything from moss, I'm just
Yeah.
no. And this thing had like just an insane root system too. So like I was sitting there, like thankfully I had this like sprayer, like this like it's almost like a freaking like
Power
like
wash.
it's like a fire hose, like and I just blast stuff off with it, but those little tiny moss petals just don't want to come off of the root hairs. Yeah. So that was a fun afternoon.
Oh, because you have to get them fully cleaned off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can have some particles and stuff on it, like a little bit of bark or fern or whatever. That's fine, but I don't like to have like a lot of moss on the roots because it just it's eventually gonna rot in the pond over time.
What's your head bumping into here?
This is an FTG Dorito port. And then this is my like very sad Dorito port that I neglected. I actually just installed this light here because it was just sitting in the dark for like 6 months because it's pissing me off.
I feel that.
He was in jail?
Yeah, he was in jail. He keeps aborting inflows really late.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Which in retrospect might be partially because I didn't have any light on it, but
You had it. How do you keep it cool in here? Do you have it like hook up to your central AC system, or
no? I actually have a air conditioner right here. It's a mini split.
okay.
So that cools the whole garage.
Gotcha.
So I had that at my previous setup, and it was just too convenient, so I had to do it again. And it's definitely worth it to keep the temperature down.
Gotcha.
The Anthuriums really thrive in lower temps. And then here's kind of like my tweener like holdback tent that I was talking about. So I have a lot of like the lighting's not as good in here, but like this is a round XGPH F2 that has like super long daggery leaves. Here's one that has like these funky like thick ruffly leaves and grows like a helicopter. Yeah, it's super thick and wavy. It's like cardboard.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I ripped the tip off that leaf, but some cool like variegated stuff. This is a NSE bench Dorito. That's just a really cool pattern. Holds a lot of pink in the leaves. It's kind of funky looking.
Yeah.
This is a round XRA1 F2, like a really nice long leaf form. Very daggery so far. So this will probably end up like similar to the number 2 clone that I showed in there. Like even though it's very daggery right now, it will widen up. Here's a stripy Carla. This is my favorite at the moment. It's looking very promising.
Yeah.
some like GPH self and GPH back cross holdbacks that are just very, interesting.
Is that another stripy?
Here's another stripy Carla. This one's a little bit more elongated. Here's another. These are actually all pretty cool. I'll show you all these. I love these. Can't get enough of these ones.
Do you have any of those available? Those are crazy.
I don't have any that look like this.
Well, I'm not asking about that.
Basically, what I sold them early on, and then once they got big enough that they were showing, kind of declaring whether they were going to be like very stripy or like more Carla leaning, then I kind of stratified them and I started selling the Carla looking ones for cheaper, because obviously everybody wants the ones that look like stripy, but those other ones are still going to be nice plants. I think they might look more akin to like a like a Black Widow Michelle type picture. So that's what I did with those, but I don't have any more of the very stripy looking ones left for sale right now. But probably pretty soon, what I'll do is I'll kind of, once these put on a couple more leaves, I'll see which ones I'm gonna use for next gen, and then I'll probably sell some divisions of kind of the more stripy ones as props, more likely. And then some cool variegated stuff. That's kind of like something I've been working on more recently, is doing more variegated stuff. So this is actually a sibling of this other one I just showed you, but very different looking. This is NSE Bench crossed with Dorito Port, and this one's kind of showing a nice like wide sinus, and it almost looks like kind of like a variegated FTG. This was a cool half moon there.
Yeah.
This is another weirdo that I like.
Ooh.
This is a variegated Pap X Dorito. Dorito seems to play real nicely with variegation for whatever reason. But this is like very white, but it just kind of keeps going.
Interesting.
So, I don't know. So yeah, this is one of my shelf, kind of like these plants that I'm keeping, but I'm not 100% sure I'm keeping, but there's not really a spot for them in there because they won't get enough light. So then I move them into these tents. I may eventually play around with keeping some of these on the shelves. I think they'll probably do okay. The humidity's not like super low in here. It's probably 60, 65 most of the time. So most of the plants can handle that. And then this is my other breakout tent. This one I have kind of more like some holdbacks, some stuff that I kind of acquired from other people that isn't ready for prime time. And then just some stuff that I can't fit anywhere else. So this is a nice Black Widow Michelle that I got from somebody.
Wow.
That I'm gonna pot up pretty soon. It's a pretty plant. I got this from Carlablackiae.
Yeah, I just caught that one too.
This is a red velvet, the dark and handsome red velvet cross. I don't remember which way it goes, but
Both.
This was like pretty narrow up until this leaf, but it still has that really like crazy, red velvet cake sheen to it. It's a snake oil from Connor Burgle.
Wow.
Which is one of my favorite plants. This is his number one, he calls it. This was his holdback. It's really cool. It just always puts out these like very like mojito kind of looking leaves. And then just some kind of like way too big for this tent stuff. This is a variegated Papex Dorito that is just like way too big, but this whole leaf is pretty much variegated here. This is like a previous leaf.
That's insane.
So my plan is to back cross some of these with Dorito and just kind of get them to be more Dorito-y looking. Because I got some that were like more elongated and kind of a little triangular, but I didn't get really super wide sinuses on them. But I'm hoping to do that in the second generation. That's BVP Sun clone there. Not looking super happy, but it'll be okay. It was a little bit unhealthy when I got it, unfortunately. And then some random dock block or red crystals and the super pink variegated Dorito cross. Yeah, this is kind of like a random, and then a bunch of old sprout trays that I forgot about that are not that are not.
Whoops.
I'll do it.
Yeah, we'll take them home with us if you want us to.
Yeah. I don't even know. What even are these? Some of them are dead. Oh my god.
Do that too.
Okay.
Just sit on the bottom shelf and I live there.
Yeah, I need to go through that later. That's bad.
Whoopsie.
You just have a few thousand seeds.
Yeah, right. It's definitely a lot. You know, thankfully I have some help with packing and with some repotting and stuff like that, but you know, I can always use more. It's just
Your family, or do you hire somebody?
I've hired someone who helps me with packing, and then you know I have someone who comes once or twice a week sometimes to help me with repotting and watering and stuff like that, so that I can actually cut other plants and repot bigger things and pollinate and collect pollen and all that stuff that just keeps building up. But really, like every time I get help with something, I end up just taking on more. I just expand a little bit more to eat up the extra time that I freed up. So, just kind of like straddling the point of like needing like a commercial setup but not wanting to like leave the convenience of my garage, because like just walking out here for 5 minutes whenever I want is so invaluable. Someone asked me, "Oh, do you have this plant?" and I just walk out in the garage and check, rather than driving even 10 minutes. If I could find a place 10 minutes away, it would be a lot. Those are cool. I have the reverse coming. I have some King of Clary selfs. I've been trying to do some cardio crosses with King of Clary and Delta Force. Really low yields.
But you've had some success.
I haven't had anything grow to maturity yet. They're real slow and they're real low yields. I'm hoping I have a couple that I'm hoping will actually grow out, but the ones that I've seen other people be successful with have been pretty cool. So there's a couple. There's like a cool red crystal Delta Force that someone has. I think Scott did Dorito Delta. Somebody else did Dorito Delta overseas, like in India or something like that, and it looks really cool. So it's just a numbers game. You just gotta try it a bunch and hope you get one that combines just right, because like they're just not fully compatible and they just don't really want to create a plant.
Do they come out like mutated and a little ugly?
They just low. So even if you get full coverage on like a really like receptive inflow, you'll get very few successful pollinations, and then of the successful ones, very few will go to full term and make a berry, and then of the berries, very few of those will come out like healthy looking berries, and then of those, not all of them will germinate, and then the ones that germinate tend to grow real slow. So that's been my experience so far. So you really just need to like just keep doing it, but you're essentially wasting an inflow every time, if you don't get something. So it's kind of like hard to balance that, but yeah, hopefully I'll get some. And then you have the issue with when you try the reverse. If you try to put it on the King of Clary or the Delta Force or the Clarinervium, those plants have such a high propensity to self-pollinate that anyone who is saying they made that cross, like a cross, say with like, they mixed it with Carla or something, I'm always skeptical, because you really need to grow those out and make sure they're not just selves. Yeah. Because like the chances of getting, like, especially if it was like a full inflow, the chances of that being a successful pollination, like cross section, is pretty low.
Yeah.
So I've done some of the reverse, and I always have to make sure that they, grow out.
Yeah.
And make sure that they actually have some traits that suggest that they're not just a selfing. But that's Anthuriums, though. They're very complicated.
I love your setup.
Thanks.
It's really awesome.
It's kind of like a hobby within the hobby, honestly. Like I spend almost as much time like tweaking and fine-tuning the setup and putting up new shelves and testing out new lights and installing fans and bubblers, and also like that's almost as much time as the actual growing at this point. But
yeah,
it's fun, it's rewarding. Yeah.
More science and more science and
Yeah.
more science.
I think everyone that likes to grow plants and wants to, like, you know, kind of like min-max everything, like, are naturally attracted to, you know, like, you know, experimenting and tweaking things. I think that's part of what makes growing plants fun. So
Yeah.
I think everybody that's in this hobby probably has a little bit of like a, you know, like a little touch at least of OCD, like ADHD. It's like, so
Something
if you
out
can
there.
channel that hyper focus of ADHD into doing stuff like this, then it's a you know, an advantage. And I think I can do that because this isn't my job. Then I can dedicate so much energy to it because it's easier to like do things that you're not that aren't what you're supposed to be doing. Because that's how it started out. It started out as like an escape to like, oh, I have all these tasks to do. Let me go do this.
Yeah.
Instead.
So you got really
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can people find your plants?
So, you know, I've got the website, Granthuriums.com.
Okay.
And then I've got Instagram is just at Granthuriums, Facebook at Granthuriums.
Perfect.
People can message me on Instagram. That's my preferred place to kind of field questions and requests and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
A massive thank you to Grant for opening up his incredible sanctuary to us today. I'm dying to know which of those Carlas was your absolute favorite. Drop a comment below and let's talk genetics. If you're ready to add some of these world-class plants to your own collection, I've linked the specific plants right here in the video products. For Grant's socials and a link to his website, head down to the description. Make sure you check out his articles. He shared a wealth of knowledge for free, from Anthurium gestation times to anatomy basics and more. If you need more green in your life, check out the tourist playlist or this video YouTube thinks you'll like best. See you next week. Bye.